And you look at 1978, that verisimilitude thing we talk about, and you have bright blue, red, and yellow. And the people of that world deal with it.
Yeah.
They accept it face on. That is a flying man with great powers who keeps helping us. Is anyone going to sit there and mock him for wearing red shorts on a blue unitard? Lex Luthor might, but I mean, that's a Luthor thing. But everyone else is just like, I don't care what you're wearing. I'm happy you're here.
Right,
and cool. I did watch The Last of Us last night, the first episode.
Just the first one, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You never played the game, right?
No, so I'd be interested. Yeah, did you?
No, I did watch PewDiePie playing it though. Back before things got controversial with him.
Well, I don't even understand. I mean, this is me being old man. I don't get the Twitchers. I don't get content creators. I'm like, I mean, for instance, I've never watched a PewDiePie. Was he funny?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was skeptical about it first, because I first saw that stuff. I was like, why does YouTube keep showing me PewDiePie
play games?
Yeah, but he actually, the reason why, I mean, he's got like something 50 million followers now, whatever it is. That's what I don't
understand.
But he's not doing what he used to do. He used to play games and he would just be silly while he was playing it, and he would just be doing his own running commentary, and he was just genuinely funny. I thought, I'm sure plenty of people disagree with me, but millions of people would agree with me. Yeah. He was just really funny, and he also included his watchers. He called them bros. He was not gender specific really, and he was very, he really included the people in what he was doing, and he was really funny. And then he's still doing stuff, but he's not really doing playthroughs anymore.
It's just interesting. I mean, that I have watched friends play games. It gets boring after a while, even if they are being their normal funny selves. It's just weird. I am an old man in this fashion where the rise of content creators and streamers, and they are celebrities, and I don't get it. It's like, It's like, for instance, you are always very nice and bring up like, hey, when we used to hang out at like House of Pies, you're always funny with them. Like going, great. Where was the camera on me? I must have been unbelievably hilarious. Where are my 50 million followers and my deal with Hollywood just by being me?
Yeah. Well,
look at what I do with my hands. That's where the few views click. Look what I'm doing with my hands.
Yeah, there goes right now. Yeah.
Oh my God. We have 1 million views because he did that thing with his hand.
Well, and I think part of it really was like, it was, in a sense, it was, I don't want to compare it to the Beatles, but it was part of the reason why the Beatles were successful was this crazy confluence of circumstances, right? It was decade. Yeah. It was the fact that all four of those guys happened to live in the same little small town in England. The decade that happened, the fact that Brian Epstein happened to find them when he did, and all kinds of crazy coincidences that if anything had happened differently, if Stuart Sutcliffe hadn't left the band, for example,
right.
or
if they decided to stick with Pete Best.
Right. Yeah. So, but with
by the way, I'm going to go on record. Fuck you, Pete.
Oh, he doesn't mean it.
You were bringing him down. No, he had a fine life. I'm sure he just sat there going, Good for you guys.
Yeah, that's really. Yeah. But he's doing all right now. I mean, after the anthology came out, he started getting, since he finally put out some of the recordings that he played on officially.
Oh yeah.
He does really, financially, he's okay now, thanks to those 3 or 4 songs. So he eventually
Paul
got
still looks him up anytime he's in town. Hey, how you doing there, P? You want to hang? You want to terrible Liverpudlian accent.
Yeah. Right, but I think the thing with PewDiePie is that he is good at what he does, but he was in the right place at the right time because YouTube was so young, and when YouTube started their monetization thing, he was able to get on the ground floor, and he just happened to enter the system at a time where it just snowballed for him, and it just never stopped.
I was working at an Apple store when I got to Portland, and it was out in the burbs, so that was a long commute on buses, but it was an okay job being a salesman, but I was one of the older guys, not the oldest. There were like a couple dudes in their 60s who worked there. I was like, oh, this is what Apple's about, man. old farts, middle-aged guys, and 19-year-olds. It was a fun time. But one of those guys I worked with who was actually, I liked him a lot because he was very charismatic and nice and friendly and funny. And he just kept talking about he and his friend they worked on skits for YouTube. And that was like what they would do. And he's like going, I know it's weird. He goes, I just, and I didn't really do a lot of theater in high school, but it's just, it's like we just keep coming up with these bits and then we film them, then we put them on YouTube. We're getting some views. And I'm like, great. I mean, to me, I'm like, well, it's nice you have a hobby. I wasn't condescending, but I just didn't get it. YouTube had always been, at that time, I just looked at it as, well, yeah, people playing around or, hosting home movies and stuff. I'm like, great. And then occasionally people doing God's work, which is I took an old VHS tape from 1987 and I put the content on there and come at me, bro. Thanks to YouTube. Speaking of which, went down a nostalgia rabbit hole. Did I tell you this last time? Because I don't want to repeat myself, but because of the podcast I do with John, both Kolchak and our horror movie one, sometimes the only way we can find some of these movies we want to cover is someone has uploaded them to YouTube. And I went on a channel. This guy had uploaded this terrible TV movie from 1997 that was House of Frankenstein. It was a modern update had a vampire, a werewolf, and a Frankenstein monster in it, and it was 97. It was bad. 2 parts, so we got to watch 3 hours of this shit. But anyway, the person who hosted that just had a bunch of like TV promos from the 80s and so forth, and through him, I found the pilot episode of a short-lived show called The Phoenix. Do you remember that?
Yes.
1981.
Yes.
Judson Scott, who played Khan's right-hand man in Star Trek II.
Yes.
And it was trippy sci-fi that doesn't work now. But the whole idea is like they found this tomb in like a Mayan temple, and the tomb doesn't seem to be made of earthly materials, and out of it comes this perfect blonde guy who apparently had been sent here from he was like a god, but sent here by alien race. And his whole thing was to teach us better ways. And and he has this cool medallion and he can't really be hurt and he glows. And, and it only aired for 5 episodes, but I remembered it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, this guy has it. And I watched it. Pretty boring. Yeah. I was easy to please in 1981.
Speaking of video games, remember there was an arcade game called Phoenix out at the time. Ooh. And I remember thinking of that when the show first came out. I was like, oh, like the video game? And they did have an episode where he plays the game. He walks up to these kids, who are playing Phoenix. And it was just this really meta thing.
They did like a tie-in.
Meta moment before we had meta moments. Yeah, he comes up and he plays the game, and of course he masters it because he's super. So he and the kids are like, "Oh my God!"
Oh, very good impression of the kids, by the way.
Oh, thank you. For some reason, that stuck with me all the time. But yeah, I would want to go and find that episode.
How'd you do it?
Hand-eye coordination. You just gotta become the machine.
And what was great, because again, pulled off of somebody's VHS tape, had local commercials in there and the whole thing. So yeah, I'm that kind of, I'm an old man. I would have done this in my 20s too, though, if it had been available. It's not like, oh, I'm so old. I would have been like, remember that show Phoenix? And if I had that availability, I would just really go, oh, cool, I can watch this again.
Mm-hmm. I think about the Phoenix thing every time I see that actor. I wouldn't have been able to name him, but I saw him, on Wrath of Khan. It's like, oh, that's a Phoenix guy.
Yeah,
that's how I always think of him from that.
Well, no, because I think that was my first introduction to him. He was an interesting looking guy, like handsome but very interesting looking. And I'd forgotten he's got a very good deep voice. So yes, since I had seen him in that first when I saw Wrath of Khan, it was the same thing. I was like, oh, that's Phoenix. That's a Phoenix, and he's hanging out with Khan.
Yeah.
Ricardo Montalban with the most awesome mullet and the craziest, buff old man cleavage. God bless Khan.
Old man cleavage. Oh yes.
Oh, we all remember that song from Porgy and Bess, like, or no, it's from Steamboat. Old
Old
man
man.
cleavage, Showboat. That old man cleavage, he just keep flexing, and ain't it vexing? He got that old man cleavage.
Oh God.
I'm very tired. Anyway.
So okay, so yeah, so the idea was, since we haven't played the game, but it is kind of interesting that a show that is based off a game. It's only 2 episodes in. I mean, a lot of people are maybe jumping the gun with this, but
they're all saying
I think it's really good
best
so
video
far.
game adaptation ever, which I say that's a pretty low bar. When
Yes.
I mean, I'm not being, snarky. Video games can have amazing characters, plots, and so forth, and they deserve a good adaptation. But when you look at the ones that have been done, most people will agree, yeah, no one's really nailed a good one.
Yeah.
I watched a few episodes of Halo, and they spent some money. I never really played a lot of Halo, played a little bit. It was handsome, but I was just kind of bored, to tell you the truth. And I was like, okay. But they took it seriously, which is a big thing. I mean, I went to go see Super Mario Brothers in the theater. All right. I saw Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo as, the Mario Brothers. And you're like, what am I doing with this?
That was a bit premature, I think.
Well, a bit premature and a bit. What happens with a lot of adaptations, especially from video games, but anything like a kid's cartoon, I honestly think that most directors that go into stuff like that, even if the studio assigned it to them or whatever, they don't care. And they're trying to make something, they're like, they overthink the source material. Like the Super Mario Brothers, if you had just given us, something close to the game instead of saying, no, we've updated all this stuff. This is what Bowser and King Koopa, you're like, no.
Yeah.
Just put the fucking mustache on the guy and have him speak with an Italian accent.
Yeah.
Have turtle people and mushrooms and, give us that. But, it's true that they somehow, because I'm also thinking of like cartoon adaptations. When I watched 20 minutes of Avatar, The Last Airbender, M. Night Shyamalan's, and I love the cartoon. And I was just like, this is a guy who decided he was going to seriousify and adultify and make it, and like, no, just give us a live action adaptation of a really good cartoon is all we're asking. I was so fucking bored. But anyway, The Last of Us, we both have not played it. So, but what I will say is John is a huge fan of those games, and he was like, dude, trust me on this. The show is really good. And I was like, will it spoil it for me if I haven't played the game, or will I not want to play the game if I watch it? And he's like, it's just a good show. And then I watched it, at least episode 1, and I was, okay.
Yeah. And it I'm familiar enough with the game. I didn't play it, but I watched, somebody else play it. But so the story, I think one of the reasons it works, I mean, obviously they have talented people working with it. Like Craig Mazin, I think is his name. He also was the showrunner for Chernobyl on HBO.
Yes, that's right.
Which was
Chernobyl
also
was
excellent.
Amazing. Yeah. Chernobyl was great.
Really, really good. So he's just, I don't know if he wrote the scripts for this one. I think he maybe wrote at least some of it. So he's a really, really good writer for one thing. He really understands how to write screenplays.
Yeah.
But the story of Last of Us was already so well conceived as far as video games go. And you can definitely feel the video game structure in the show still, because it's like, oh, we've only got 2 choices. we can only go this way through this obstacle course, basically, because it's everything else is blocked, So there's a little bit of that.
I was caught up enough not to clock that, but people, I did see someone online talking about episode 2, which I haven't seen yet, but they were like saying, Last of Us fans are ticked off that they unlocked the automatic rifle so early on the show, and the whole idea of like, well, now he's got that. It's like, wait, man, it took me a long time to get an automatic rifle, and now he's just got it.
Yeah,
Fuck you, Joel.
I know. That's the thing is like people have to let go of that kind of ridiculous nitpicking.
I think they're being snarky.
Let
Everyone
them tell
seems
the story.
to.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, they packed it with great actors. And Lord, that, you know, I mean, yes, one of the reasons I didn't play the game was I was already, when that game came out, a little tired of zombies. Walking Dead was a great comic. I had read it and then watched the show for a long time. I gave up after, I don't know, season 7, somewhere in there. Around the time Negan showed up, even though he's a great character and I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Hey, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, don't get me wrong. I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the show had already gone in a place. I was like, yeah, I'm just not getting anything out of this. There's no
for some reason
in this show.
Yeah. For some reason they had reinvented Negan with the mayor, who wasn't in the comics as far as right? Was the mayor in the comics?
Mm-hmm.
He was? Okay.
The mayor's in the comics, and what's more, they wrote an entire novel about him.
Okay.
Like his origin story was turned into a novel.
But it just seemed like, isn't Negan basically the same guy as the mayor?
Not really. What disturbed me in the comic, but I mean, it made sense in the comic. It just didn't make sense in the TV show. Negan does start out as this nightmarish leader, who does incredibly violent things, but they end up, it's not a redemption arc. It's just that they get to a point where they do need him, so they forgive him the stuff he had already done. Because, I mean, he is responsible for the death of, like, Glenn, who's, you know, fan favorite character. I loved Glenn. And when they took him out, I was like, dude, fuck you, show.
I know.
And it was sometimes true in the comic. I mean, I respect Robert Kirkman, but I'd be reading the comic and going, I get how hopeless this world is, but god damn, this is dark.
Yeah.
And too much of that, even for a dude very much like myself who likes true crime and all that dark stuff. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to get that away. So when the game came out, I was like, oh boy, zombies, great. Oh, that's,
yeah.
And so I avoided it. And then I kept hearing how good it was, like with this amazingly dramatic story that was moving people and people were crying playing the game. And then I said, I made the right choice, because if there's one thing I don't want in a video game, I don't want it to be so devastating that I'm crying. I'm like, no, man, I can't. It's escapist entertainment for me, so I don't want to get caught up in Joel and Ellie's story.
Sure.
So I avoided it because I'm emotionally weak. But
yeah.
But again, the show is just, it's gripping. I will say both the first episode of Walking Dead and this did a really great job with, and that's the key to apocalyptic zombie stories, is show how quickly it can happen and what happens to society, like immediately.
Yes. Yeah. That was, to me, the most fascinating thing about Walking Dead, especially that first season, was the world building, showing you, I mean, the way it started with Rick waking up in the hospital was great. And of course they borrowed that kind of from, was it 24? What's the one where the zombie apocalypse that takes place in England?
28 days later.
28, yeah. But the guy, same thing. Guy wakes up after it's already happened and
it very much. But again, that's in the comic too. So maybe Robert Kirkman, when he was writing, he was like, "Oh, I'll do a 28 days later." Yeah. But yes, that is cool.
The thing I really liked about that first season is that they did some things that weren't in the comics, from what I understand, with the whole thing with the CDC, where they get the last episode.
Yeah.
And there you get a lot of background on how the virus started and a little bit of the chemistry or biology behind it. And I
understand from fans of the Last of Us game that the show is already doing a little bit of that.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the game is still a long game, but it is a contained storyline. It's not like Witcher or Skyrim where you can wander off and do all kinds of side stuff forever.
Yeah.
But still, they're like, well, we have to build it. And so I love that. I really liked the way the first episode started with that flashback to the 60s, like the talk show, and the two biogeneticists or whatever talking about, what will be the thing that could destroy us, and the other guy's like, viruses, which of course, wink at you guys in the 2020s, pandemics. And then the other guy goes, no, I'm saying it's going to be the fungi.
Yeah.
The fungi.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that this show really gets to me, like gets to the heart of me and where it really resonates, I hate mushrooms. I hate mushrooms so bad. So in a weird way, this show is proving me right. Mushrooms are
Mushrooms are
from the
evil.
devil, and they're going to kill us all.
Right.
And they will turn us into mushrooms.
But yeah, that's the thing I really like about the show is that it's not shying away from that aspect of it. Because from what I understand, I remember reading about this with Walking Dead that they lost or they fired and say whoever the original showrunner was got fired because
it was a Frank
he was the one
Darabont.
he was a guy. He was more steering it more towards sci-fi instead of just zombie stuff. And that's one of the things that made the first season so interesting. But it was high. All the stuff he wanted to do was really high budget. So I think he was clashing with the studios because he wanted more money than they could give him, which was ridiculous because it was such a successful show. And so then we get to season 2, and they spend the whole season on a farm. And
I mean, that is a storyline from the comics, but they spent a lot longer.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh wow. And then I think even they realized, well, we should have wrapped that up halfway into.
Yeah.
Though good characters there. That's where we got Maggie from, and she's another favorite.
Yeah. And Glenn. Oh no, Glenn's the first episode. Yeah.
Glenn. Yeah, he was running into the city to get supplies and stuff.
Yeah, he was the best thing about the original cast.
I know. It's like there were certain. The only character that I kept waiting for, and when she finally showed up, I was very, very happy. But there were characters that, since I had known the comics, I was like, okay, well, I don't care much about this character. They did change things, and people who died stuck around longer, and some people who you thought were going to make it all the way through died in the show, and you're like,
yeah, and vice versa.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, obviously for me, it was like Rick, great, and great casting, and Glenn, love him. Maggie, glad she's here, but I kept waiting for Michonne, and then she showed up, and she's great, and I'm like, okay, all right, that's like my core characters, and they were handled well for a long time, but shows can go too long, man. Shows can go too long.
It just seemed like they were going in circles after a while. It's like they just keep telling the same story.
Yeah, the format, and I will be interested to see if Last of Us avoids that. Some people are saying the first season of this will be like the first game, and if they come back for second season, which they will because the ratings are crazy, will be like the second game. If they are actually able to keep it to that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But with Walking Dead, it did become a rinse and repeat, even in the comics to some degree. The Robert Kirkman's brilliant. It became like, we move, we find a place we think is safe. And then the people that are already there will either become our friends or someone will turn it, and any safe haven then becomes unsafe. And then we have to move on, and we've lost some people. It's like, great, we found the farm. Oh, shit. Okay, don't worry about it. We found a jail. Okay. Oh, shit. Well, now let's go to this place called Haven. Oh, shit. Right. It's basically just kept being like, why can't we just stay somewhere for 2 fucking weeks?
Yeah, and so many soap opera-esque moments of like people sitting down and talking about their feelings for 30 minutes every week. Like, God damn it. That started happening in season 2.
And I was another zombie, man.
Yeah. But
you had the love triangle thing of like Shane, who became our Punisher.
He was much better as a Punisher.
Yeah, man, he's great. And then of course, We Own This City. Did you watch that? By the way, did you watch We Own This City?
No, what is that?
That was the true crime show made by the guys who made The Wire, which is one of the greatest television shows of all time. And it was also set in Baltimore, but it was based on a true story because The Wire is all fiction, kind of real based. But We Own the City was about actual cops in Baltimore that had been involved in this sort of criminal enterprise, and they got busted. And John Bernthal played the main cop, and he adopted a Baltimore accent for it. And it felt like The Wire. It felt like a weird sequel to The Wire. Really gritty, real world stuff. And he's just a really good actor. And Jerry and I, big fans of The Wire and so forth, so we talk about that. I've noticed, and it was in The Punisher, it's in The Wire. I mean, not in The Wire, but anything you see him in, Walking Dead, John Bernthal's acting is very good, but he must have watched so much De Niro when he was a kid.
Oh,
Because he has these De Niro-isms that cracks me up. It's a thing where he looks at somebody, someone's said something really tough to him and really angry, and he just looks at him like, and then he'll answer him by ducking the head down like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But then look up at him.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was like going, I mean, it's okay. Every actor has ticks, but I'm like going, when Walking Dead happened and there was all the scenes about he was in love with Rick's wife and he had protected her. And then of course it came down to, I'm going to have to kill you and then I'll kill you instead. But it was always like going, I protected you.
Yeah.
You became my family. And it's like, John Bernthal, you're great, but I got you. I got you.
I really I didn't like his character. I know he was supposed to be despicable, but they also tried to make him sympathetic at times, but he was just such a
he was obviously going to be
what about me?
Again, man.
Yeah.
You're doing a really good Bernthal. I don't know. When did you start doing all these impressions? You're the new Rich Little.
So when the Punisher came out, I was like, oh, this guy. And I watched it. I was like, oh, this is good. I like him.
I think he's the good. He was a very good choice. And I just really appreciated the show of the Netflix Marvel shows were good. I don't really want to have to detach from them because like, okay, now the characters are back with just over at Disney, but I'm sitting there going, they were good. And with the Punisher, it was as hardcore as it needed to be.
It was almost a little too hardcore. The second season, especially. It's like,
there was some tough stuff. But he didn't walk around wearing white boots and white gloves enough because you look at the original design of the character, you're like going, for a hardcore ex-Vietnam vet who wants to take out all criminals, he's got those dainty white gloves and his dainty white boots, big skull on his chest. I always loved that the teeth of the skull were those rods that I guess had ammunition in them or something. Oh. And I was like, but they would extend down past his belt. I'm like, that means he can't sit down. He probably sits down, his rods and be like, oh, the skull teeth just went into my crotch. Oh, I just racked myself with the skull teeth. That was an impractical comic book design. Anyway, so Last of Us, very good.
Yeah.
Bella Ramsey, man.
Yeah.
Can you believe she's 19 years old?
Is she? I don't know. I've never seen her before.
She's going to look like, Game of Thrones. Were you not a Game of Thrones guy?
No, but it doesn't surprise me. Like every time there's somebody like, there's so many of those, all those actors have gone off to do other things.
Yeah. So. I mean, she played a character in that, which isn't a major character, but showed up in later seasons, who it was a young woman who took over she became the head of her clan, essentially her kingdom, because all the older folks had been killed off, but still the men served her. And it was meant to be not funny, but they're like, who represents house, blah, blah, blah. And she stands up and all the old guys are like, Jesus. And then she ends up being total badass. And everyone's like going, oh, we will follow you. Yeah. And she looked in that show like she's 12 or 11. And here she is playing Ellie, who's supposed to be, I think, like 15, 16.
14, I think.
Or 14. Yeah. And again, it's just, she's slight, she's tiny, she has a very young face. And I'm sitting there going, my God, you're nearly a fully grown adult. You're going to look like a child for the rest of it.
For a really long time, yeah.
But she turns out to be a very good actor. So
yeah.
And it had Anna Torv in it. Big fan of Anna Torv.
Does she play?
She plays Tess.
Tess, okay. Yeah, I know I'd seen her before. I don't know.
Mindhunter. She was on Fringe. Fringe, by the way, I don't know if you ever watched that show. If you hang with it into season 1, I've given you homework now. Fringe is it's wrong to say it's an X-Files show, but it's similar, and it gets into multiverse and alternate realities, and it gets pretty crazy. And it has your favorite character from Dawson's Creek in it, Joshua Jackson. I know you were a big fan of Pacey. And Anna Torv is the female lead in that, and she's great.
Okay.
All right. So go watch the 4 or 5 seasons of Fringe. Get back to me, okay?
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, the getting back to The Last of Us, the world building, they do, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, the second episode, but they start the second episode with another earlier segment that fleshes out the world and what's happened up into this point. And I hope they keep doing that every week because it's so cool.
Like going back and
yeah. So they're kind of taking advantage. It's brilliant that they're taking basically the same story and the same characters, but they're changing things here and there, but it's mostly pretty accurate to what the game is. But then they're also adding stuff to it.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. So
I'm
really happy about that. Yeah.
I mean, I think people, even if they were huge fans of the game, would be a little like when I was talking about like Super Mario Brothers, it's not that you can't, if you're adapting something, try to give back story or weight or some sort of explanations. You can do that. You just don't want to have the end result look nothing like or feel nothing like the source material. So in other words, what they're doing, if they had just started with the way the game starts, and then you get to your next level, and then you go to this place, I think even if they did it well, gamers would be like, well, what was the point of making this? It's like, we've already gone through all this. It's like, I know what happens. But yes, world building, as long as it doesn't become the whole reason for the show, it can be very good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hang in there. It has been a while since I've watched something like that, and it is kind of making me want to play the game.
Yeah.
Both games. I did have John spoil it for me because I was like going, all right. At what point does Ellie become a zombie? He's like, she doesn't. And I was like, oh, okay. At what point is she forced to kill, him, Joel? And he goes, no, that's not how it happens. And then he goes, spoiler, Joel does. And I was like, good. I wanted it spoiled because I'm like, if I go into the game, I don't want to have to sit there going like, oh no, because I would see people online tweeting about, I got to this point in the game and I don't know if I can even go back. Oh, I'm devastated. I'm like, no, tell me all the people who die first, okay?
Right. I will say I don't know. I know that some of the controversial thing that happens in the second game that happens to one of the main characters, which I'm not going to spoil it for you watching, for people if you haven't played it. But I don't know how that game ends. So I'm assuming, I don't know if they wrapped it up or if there's going to be a third game. I'm sure there's going to be a third game now.
Oh, actually, I don't think I even asked that. I assumed that they would leave the characters, the main ones who survive, in a acceptable place, but I didn't think they would actually like go, and then we found the cure. Because the first game made so much money. The second game apparently is the greatest sequel of all time and one of the greatest games ever made. So I'm sure they're sitting there going like, oh, we can have a few more fungi people. I think we're not done with the fungi people.
Yeah, I just hope they do figure out a way to tie it up, because that was the thing about The Walking Dead that was so annoying. It's still going with other shows. Like, it never ends. And I'm like,
the comic ended.
Come on. Finally, yeah. But it hadn't, during the first run of the series, it was still going, right? And Robert Kirkman still hadn't really, he was kind of making it up as he went at that point.
Was it like issue 178 or something, or 175 or so? It was like maybe 5 years ago that the comic wrapped up finally. And had a, very powerful ending. That's all I'll say. I don't want to spoil that for people.
All right. So let's go back in time.
Gotta go back in time.
Do you remember when, because we've talked about video games a little bit on some of the previous shows, and that you said that you're mostly a PC gaming guy?
I mean, I of course lived through the birth of video games, but sadly due to, well, here they come.
It's time here again. Comes the
sirens. Yeah. Unfortunately, my family, my parents were teachers. We never went without stuff, but the more expensive stuff, including Atari 2600 and all that, I never had a gaming console. I would play at friends' houses. Like if they had Atari or ColecoVision or whatever it was, I was like, yeah, woo. But at my house, nope. Oh, actually, what am I doing this for? It was.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Ow.
Yeah, with the little button on the side.
You would get sore like joystick thumb right here. You know, I think I actually had a callus right here.
Yeah, of course you did. From playing all that Combat. Combat, the
Combat and Yar's Revenge.
Yar's Revenge. Combat's what it came with, Atari 2600.
It did.
But yeah, so it's been amazing over the course of our lives. I'm sure you feel the same way as a 50-some-odd-year-old person, just to see where it came from. You know, Pong to what you're able to do now is just in our lives. That's nuts. That's crazy. Go nuts.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm mainly a PC gamer. I have a PS5 that I play the more fancy new stuff on, and it's great. I mean, I played, I played plenty of stuff on PC that I now have kind of transferred over because it looks nicer on the PS5.
Okay. I've never had a PS5 I had the original Atari 2600 and the 5200, which came out after that, which died on the vine, unfortunately, because the video game industry was in the process of tanking in the
they had invested so much in ET.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors. Atari was just, I think, ultimately the victim of bad management. But there's so many great things came out of that company. Those developers, the guys who actually wrote the games went on to do other great stuff. And started.
I actually did watch.
Activision was started by former Atari employees.
Yeah. I've watched a few documentaries on this stuff. I did watch a documentary about the ET game and the death of Atari. And the guy and he found the graveyard of the ET video cassettes. That was pretty great. And I've watched other things because Netflix has done things like the toys that made us, the short little documentaries about different toy lines. I've watched those, the movies that made us. I've also watched a couple documentaries about just the origin of the video games, where Nintendo came from and so forth. And it is fascinating and a weird business to get into. But again, you're like, just the thought behind, because they interviewed one of the guys at Nintendo who was the sound dude who was coming up with what it sounded like every time Mario jumped, and that kind of thing. He's like going, so I thought it would be like this. And you're like, we never think about, they had to conceive of everything, like what pixel blocks would be his mustache. It's like, does that look like a mustache, or does it look like a guy running around with his mouth open going, ah? And they're like, ah. And so just the visual bits, they're like, why did he end up fighting mushrooms? Because they were easy to design. Okay. Yeah. Rolling barrels in Donkey Kong. It's like, well, sure. I guess a giant gorilla would throw barrels at you. Why not? Love that stuff. Because it seems so intrinsic, because we just played the games without question. Like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
Why wouldn't I fly a giant ostrich over boiling lava and watch out for pterodactyls? I still fucking love Joust.
Oh, Joust. Yes, of course.
You fly giant, birds over lava, and you have to watch out for pterodactyls.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And they lay eggs, right? Isn't there eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to play Joust after there was a game room near my middle school. That was on the way home. I would go in there, and I would deliberately not spend my lunch money on lunch, and I would just not eat, and I'd use my money to play video games.
And by game room, you do mean just that creepy dude who's like, "Yeah, come on in, boys. School's
it was pretty
out.
seedy. Yeah.
I got some video games for you."
They had Joust in there. They had Super Pac-Man, which was one of those mod versions. I didn't know that at the time, but now I know that those, like Super Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, originally started off as
a knockoff.
That Atari hired them to make it, to do something official. But yeah, Battlezone. I'm trying to think what else was in there.
Battlezone.
Kicks. Remember Kicks?
No.
Is that what it's called? Kicks? It was a 3-dimensional vector graphic game. Like a vortex.
For some reason, the vector graphics games I did better at, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe they were easier, but Battlezone I was pretty good at. Red Baron, which was,
Yes.
it had the animated, like, you're supposedly looking at your propeller because you're in a biplane and you're shooting at triplanes. I did good at that. I did good at Asteroids and a knockoff of Asteroids called, was it Solar Quest? Because I had a little sun in the middle of the screen.
That rings
but
a bell,
you were
yeah.
still that weird little arrowhead shaped ship like from Asteroids, and you had to avoid going into that sun or you'd burn up, and you were still shooting stuff that was coming at you. But just like Asteroids, you could head that way and you'd enter the other side of the screen.
The other side. Yeah.
I fucking love that. And you could spin and twirl. Love that.
My favorite, of course, my favorite vector game was the Star Wars one, though, where you got to do the trench run.
Yeah,
and
because that was a sit-down game. That was the first I remember of a sit-down game. Oh, maybe there was like a driving one too.
I think there's a standard version.
Yeah. But I remember the sit-down version of the Star Wars thing, and because it had the speakers right there, so you hear Obi-Wan going, trust your feelings, Luke.
Use the Force, Luke. Luke, trust me.
And I'm like, I'm gonna.
That was one of the first games I remember having actual voices in it. In the arcade too.
And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, this will never, they'll never get better than this.
Yeah. But it's just the same two missions over and over again. I was like, I never got sick of playing it. And what was it? I think two of the weirdest games were my favorite too were Burger Time and Mappy. Mappy was also a weird one.
I don't know, Mappy.
And then you didn't play Mappy?
No.
And Food Fight. Did you play Food Fight?
Food Fight, yeah.
Remember that?
Food Fight, yeah. Food Fight and Burger Time. I was actually brought up Burger Time talking to Jerry the other night because I was like, we were talking about old video games, and I was saying like I didn't like Burger Time because I hate eggs.
It was too dramatic.
Yeah, well, I just hate, and so like I'm okay with dropping meat and pickles and whatever on top of a bun. That's great. And these like fried eggs come at you. I'm like, God, hate eggs. On this episode, we've talked about my hatred of mushrooms and eggs.
But I think it was Dwight who pointed out how it's funny that because if one of the eggs or one of the hot dogs that's walking around trying to follow you, trying to get you, one of them touches the chef, he seems to die, but the way he dies, Dwight pointed out, I think he's just having a fit because he just hates like the food touches him like he's like obsessive compulsive like
maybe I am the Burger Time chef. You heard it here first, folks. Brendan Jones is the Burger Time chef.
Mappy was a game where there was a mouse who was a burglar who was running around a house trying to steal televisions and stuff, and these cats were chasing. Oh no, actually he wasn't a burglar; he was a cop. Sorry, Mappy was the cop. And he was trying to stop cat burglars from stealing stuff.
And they were actual cat burglars.
Yeah, and they were really interesting game mechanics too, where there were these trampolines that you'd jump on, and if you could only jump on them like 3 times, and then they would break, so you had to be very careful. And you change levels. It was very interesting game mechanics.
I don't know,
great music. That's the main thing. I still remember the music vividly.
It is. That's another one of those things where just you don't think that there was actually a composer that said what sounds right in this MIDI, tinny MIDI thing where I have to come up with what it sounds like when a cat burglar attacks a mouse cop.
Yeah. Speaking of music too, remember Rolling Thunder, which was at House of Pies for the longest time?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I actually more remember Samurai Showdown. I played a lot more Samurai Showdown.
They replaced that with that, and we would play that for endlessly, but there was the one of those characters who actually had a fart attack. You remember that?
Yes.
With the big guy.
Yeah. Oh, games are very subtle.
Strange.
Fat guy, what will his attack be? Oh, he's going to fart at you because he's a fat guy. It writes itself.
So weird. But Rolling Thunder had amazing music. That's the main thing I love.
Yeah. I mean, I was disappointed. Anytime a place, again, we lived through this. When you like, if you went to your Circle K or Stop and Go and they changed out their game, it'd be like, oh man, what?
Yeah.
Because I remember for a long time in the subdivision that I grew up in outside of in Sugarland, where our Stop and Go for a long time it had Dragon's Lair. It had a lot of the Laserdisc games, Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. I played those, never got great because really that's not, you just have to time everything right, and I'm terrible at that anyway. But then they swapped it out for what was the one with the penguin and the ice blocks?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's what they changed it out for, and I was like, fuck you, Stop and Go.
Lame.
Penguin. Yeah. But before that was Dig Dug. Dig Dug was, I liked Dig Dug, all right.
Was it Pingo or something like that?
Yeah, it was something. It had Pingy, Pingo, Ponga, Poga.
There was a Denny's off of, I think it was a Denny's, off of 290 somewhere, like going out to Jersey Village where Dwight still lived with his parents at the time. Dwight and I would go there.
Man, you're totally doxing Dwight. Like, people are now like, they're writing down notes going like,
oh, guys, finally I found him.
His family lived on, okay.
I don't think they live there anymore. But we went to this one Denny's just because they had Golden Axe, which was a 2-player
Golden Axe.
game.
I remember Golden Axe.
And that was a great one as well.
I also remember the big innovation of multiplayer games where it wasn't just player 1, player 2, but those 4, so you had the X-Men game where you could choose which X-Men you were going to be. They had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one where you picked which turtle you wanted to be, and it was like 4 people playing at once.
Yeah.
And the original one was Gauntlet, and I remember Gauntlet. Like, are you going to be the warrior guy? You're going to be the wizard? You're going to be the rogue? I loved that.
Yeah. Golden Axe was kind of like that. And I remember there was also an Avengers multiplayer game that we used to play at the Evil River Oaks Theater, as we used to call it.
The Evil River Oaks that was down the street. But were you there that night when we beat it? Where we kept trading off that Avengers game. We had a stack of quarters and we would play, and we were just determined, like, it doesn't matter. We're just going to beat it. It doesn't matter who does it. Like, all right, I played a guy. I'm dead. Do you want to continue? Yes or no? Yes. Now it's your turn. I think Dwight was there, maybe Patrick, but we just kept going. And then we did beat it. It took us like 2 hours or something. And we finally saw the ending animation, which is literally like the Avengers Quinjet comes down, and it's like the president shows up, and Captain America says, like, "You have saved us, Avengers," and it's like,
I do have a vague memory of that.
And it ends with like an American flag waving, like "God bless the USA" or something. I was like, "We did it!"
If I was there, I probably was sitting it out by that point. Maybe why it's a hazy memory for me.
That's okay. There. For me, one of the highlights of my life.
There was a Willow game too. I remember playing. I
remember playing Tron a lot.
Tron, yes.
With that weird light up joystick that was meant to look futuristic, so it had like blue neon lighting.
And that's I still remember that new da 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 da, which they do in between each little screen. Each part of the game, because
it mimicked all the parts of the game. You did the light cycles. There were the flying things that came at you, and then you ended up having to throw discs into the middle of the master, whatever it was, master program.
Right?
Yeah.
So when did you get your first PC and start into that world?
Well, I'm always late, Gummer, to everything. So I think I didn't have a PC till 98, maybe 97, 98. I definitely had it by the time I got to LA.
So not too
early days of internet. And I remember, disc games like the original Diablo I had, and I played the hell out of that. I also MMORPGs when they first started. I was all over those.
Like EverQuest?
No, not EverQuest actually, but like World of Warcraft. I was there early days. Loved that, and I played that for a long time. City of Heroes. of course, that was right at my alley. I still was very upset when they turned the servers off. They're like, well, thanks for the last 12, 13 years. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's been
no!
real.
What
Yeah.
happens to my characters?
So let's wind you back to 98 or whenever it was, or 97, whenever. Mine, I first got mine in 96 was when I finally got a PC. I went totally computerless.
Gateway?
I went totally I had a Mac. I had the first Mac when it came out, and I played some games on that. But when I moved to New York,
I never had a
Paul,
Mac.
When I moved to New York with Paul, I didn't take it with me because it was so old by that point. I wasn't really using it for anything anymore. So I didn't have a computer until Paul and Marla moved away. And then my dad, for Christmas one year, he said, "Here's some money. Go buy a PC. Just get something within this price range." So I went out and bought an IBM Aptiva from the Wiz in New York, right down this was a couple blocks away from my apartment. And that's when I started playing PC games. And so there was it came with a couple of games. One of them was this Kid's Adventure that I actually played, which I'm just blanking on the name.
I won't tell anybody.
But the thing that I was really excited to get at the time was Dark Forces, which had just come out the year before or the earlier.
I'm not sure I know that one.
Dark Forces, Star Wars Dark Forces.
Oh, I never played it.
It was the first Kyle Katarn game. So you never played Dark Forces or Jedi Knight, any of those games? Oh man, those were the best.
Look, man, get off my back. Eventually, and I ended up being obviously a huge fan of the company, and I still am, but they haven't really bounced back. BioWare, I started following them because I love story games. I love games. People that get pissed off about cutscenes, I'm like, no, give me
the
more.
cutscenes.
I love that I'm in a novel or a movie, but I also get to play. So, so they did Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay.
And of course they started doing their own stuff. Obviously, Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Love them still. All of the series, even the weak ones. I'm like, I know this isn't as good as the other one, but I like it. So, I've played all of those and still like that company a lot. But yeah, the Star Wars stuff, other than Knights of the Old Republic, and then their MMOR, but that came much later, which was Old Republic.
Well, there were Star Wars Galaxies before that too.
I didn't have Galaxies, but I love that stuff. Jerry, of course, being a huge Star Wars fan. Honestly, Jerry is a bigger Star Wars fan than I, and therefore he absorbs it all.
Yeah.
And I certainly do love it. But yeah, people start talking about old Star Wars games. I'm like, never had Battlefront, never had, any of those others.
X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
Yeah, I never had those.
Those were so good.
I always was tempted by things like Battlefront, where you can literally pilot different classic vehicles in different classic battles. But I was like, yeah, but is there a story? No, I'm out, man.
Yeah.
That's why Knights of the Old Republic was great. It's like, oh, there's soap opera, there's myth making and mythos in it, and I'm running around choosing will I be a Jedi or will I be a Sith? Right. Great stuff.
My favorite Star Wars game ever was it was a sequel to the original Dark Forces, which was about the protagonist was Kyle Katarn, who was the mercenary who was hired by the rebellion to steal the Death Star plans. He was in the original canon before Disney came along. Kyle Katarn was basically the Jyn Erso, or it was a combination of Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor. And actually,
is that why you always wear that shirt that's like Justice for Kyle Katarn? Because you're like, I will not forget him and his sacrifice.
Well, and the difference, Kyle Katarn goes on to be Force sensitive. It turns out his father was a Jedi, and he turns out he has the Force, so he trains to be a Jedi, and he works with Luke Skywalker and stuff. So it gets so Luke Skywalker comes into everything. But
does Mark Hamill do the voice?
No, they have an actor doing it, I think, but it's very good.
They have an actor as opposed to Mark Hamill, who is just a Jedi.
But they did several. There was Dark Forces, there was Dark Forces 2, and there was.
I know that most of the games that they did had sequel after sequel after sequel.
Yeah, but the last one was Jedi Outcast, which came out, I don't know, gosh, 2004, 5 or something.
In
That one was
series.
really good. Yeah, and that one was really good. It was one of the best games where you have a lightsaber that I'd ever played up to that point. And I've replayed that game so many times. Both Dwight and I both were huge fans of that game.
Well, have you
You can
played?
get it on Steam today.
Have you played the recent stuff?
No, I kind of Half-Life 2 was like the last big PC game that I played. So I'm decades out of it by now.
Yeah, you are.
So I just kind of, the game started getting too intense and complex for me. And once I realized I could just watch people play,
Well,
now I don't have to spend the money to play it. I could just watch somebody else play it.
I am not a great gamer. I do love them. And so, I mean, I can only say, because it's on several platforms. It used to be just PlayStation, but the Spider-Man game from just a few years ago, and then it had a sequel, which is Miles Morales Spider-Man. But the PlayStation Spider-Man game, it's one of the best in the world, and it's doable. Though I will say that because I'm so bad, I have not completed the last mission. I'm literally on the last mission, and I just can't beat Doc Ock, and I'm just the worst. But up until that point, it's just well written, and you feel like you're in a Spider-Man game, and the mechanics of swinging through the city, which is a fully realized New York, unbelievable, man. So the games have gotten just crazy, crazy good. And I have played Fallen Order, but not all the way to the finish, which is the latest of the Star Wars games. And it is very much a movie or novel. Mm-hmm. So it has a real storyline. It's a little jarring that the actor who plays the main character, this new Jedi character, is modeled on the actual actor. And he's a guy I've seen I used to watch Shameless on Showtime.
Yeah.
And he's an actor from that. I'm like, I don't want it to look like that guy. It's like, make him look like somebody else. Cause then I just think that I'm watching a movie with that guy playing this character. Yeah. And now of course they're talking about, hey, why don't we make a live action series with him playing the character he played in the game?
There's been quite a lot of speculation that Cameron Moynihan is going to appear as Cal Kestis. I know this. I've never played the game. I know this stuff because
there you go. It's okay. God bless. God bless you, Chad.
We're all friends here, so it's
there's hope for you yet.
Yeah.
No. So it is. It is good.
Did you ever play speaking of LucasArts stuff? Did you play the old LucasArts story-based games? The computer PC games like Sam and Max Hit the Road and
no, I never did. Or is it the Monkey Island thing? Was another one. No, but I did play one of the Indiana Jones games, and it was
Atlantis.
Great.
Fate of Atlantis.
Yes, Fate of Atlantis.
Yes, I was about to get to that. Yeah, that's also I think one of my favorite games from the '90s.
It's clunky,
so much fun
because it's just it is very. I mean, come on, Tomb Raider had already come out, so they were imitating some of that functionality, but it's indie. So, and I love that they would include stuff they didn't have to, where like cutscenes would show you like the map and then like the plane and the dot and the red line. It's like, yeah, they're doing all the stuff from the movies. I love that stuff. And it sounded like they got a good actor who sounded enough like Harrison Ford. I was like, yeah, man, I'm in this thing.
It's a medieval gargoyle. Or a good imitation.
I liked that one a lot. So I did play that one.
I like the game mechanics in those games where you get, it's basically just dialogue. Some of it was action where it was just button mashing. It's like, to try to beat to the fighting sequences or like try to fill up the bar by hitting the
whip, whip.
But I love all the responses. Like when you're trying to say what the bouncer at the theater, when you're trying to get into the theater to talk to the female character, I can't remember her name. And there's all these rude responses like "screw you," like it reminds me of what you were saying last week's joke about the Fantastic Four. Like, fuck you! Just completely stuff that was completely out of character for Andy to say.
Flame on! It's clobbering time! Fuck you!
And I was always hoping that they would do Atlantis like in one of the movies. Which
it seems like such an obvious thing. That I know that not only the game, but there was Atlantis tied into one of the novels, the Indiana Jones novels that they commissioned. One of them had Atlantis as a subplot, but it wasn't the plot of the game. It was just, yeah, Indiana Jones, Atlantis. It just, why wouldn't you? But they never got around to it. We had Crystal Skulls and Holy Grails and things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the Dial of Destiny is. I just don't know, Chad. What's the Dial of Destiny? We're going to find out.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
Something to do with time travel, I presume.
All right, if you're going to be that way about it.
The presumey?
Yeah.
Presumably.
God, Chad, so presumey.
I know I joked about this in our message exchange last night that that as soon as we publish another episode, James Gunn is going to finally announce.
Yeah, he actually said it was going to be the 14th, and I was like, when the 14th passed, the only thing that came out was that when, I don't know, rumors about Jason Momoa playing Lobo, but that was again just rumors.
Yeah, it was just in the past couple of days, so 3 or 4 days ago, that he
said, I'm always going to be your Aquaman.
Well, no, he was leaving DC Studios just over the moon, and he couldn't say what it was, but I'm still here. And he did sort of confirmed later that he's going to be playing a new character in the new DCU.
Well, he also did a tease. Yeah, he was like going, those of you guys who know me know that I do collect comics, and I mainly collect this one character. And if you know me well enough, you know that that's my favorite character. And so everyone's like going, I don't know, but you do look like Lobo.
Yeah.
And I have to think that if Jason Momoa's favorite DC character is Lobo, it makes sense. He looks just like him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he would be fine. In fact, the stuff that they had him saying as Aquaman would all sound fine coming out of Lobo's mouth.
Yeah.
My man.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to be really surprised if that's not what the story is. The thing that I found also, James has said, people keep saying it's January 20th now. The month's almost over. Yes. No, it's not. It's only not even 3/4 over. So, but are we going to get an announcement this month? Yes, you will.
The fact that he engages and he doesn't have to. I mean, he could just sit there, open up, read some stuff, and go, eh. But instead, he will occasionally go like, okay, I'm talking to you guys.
This was the thing I found most entertaining and interesting is that there was a picture he posted of his cat a couple weeks ago where somebody noticed in the background there was several volumes of Batman and I think Superman stories. Some Grant Morrison, I think possibly this was one of them, or something. Might have been,
the Grant Morrison
Black Glove, but it was one of those. I think I actually have some of those volumes that Nathan gave me. Nathan gave me this too. I've been reading it.
It's great.
The Black Glove. For those of you not watching the video,
the Grant Morrison Batman stuff, great and weird. The fact he's like going, you know, those weird other Batmen from other nations from the 1950s. I'm going to make them canon and bring them back. And you're like, what are you even? Gaucho Batman, Man of Bats, the Native American one, Man of Bats. Come on.
So the people pointed out like, "Ooh, is this meant to be a hint? You know, is this like an Easter egg you put in the photo?" And James goes like, "No, it's not. You know, but am I reading them? Yes. It's not meant to be a hint." And then very deliberately, a few days ago, he published him saying, "I'm reading nothing better than comics and coffee in the morning," and he's reading also Superman. Can't see the cover, but there's a page which actually I can find which page it is. It's early on in the story. It's it's this one. He's got it open to this page.
Oh,
where Superman's just come back from that first mission.
Oh,
he's getting the news that he's going to die. So I thought that really interesting because we were just addressing this. One of our viewers was asking,
I want
to see a live action All-Star Superman, which I still think would be cool. I don't think the guy didn't go into much details, the fellow who asked that question, but I don't think he meant like for the canon version. Obviously, you don't want to start off a new canon with Superman dying. Spoiler alert, by the way.
And also, like I said before, Morrison, even All-Star Superman, which is great. All-Star Superman has a through line story, right? Obviously, Superman's dying, but every individual issue is like a whole other thing. It's like when you talk about All-Star Superman, you're talking about 11 different Superman stories with this undercurrent. So what are you talking about? It could be the one where he gives Lois Superman powers, which again is a very 50s one, or the one where he, hangs out with Samson and Atlas, which is another like Silver Age thing that Grant Morrison's like, he cannot resist. And I love the fact Grant Morrison goes, I'm going to dip into the silliest bullshit from the past and make it work somehow. It's like, that is my goal. Yeah. And I love it. It's like, are we going to do a Beppo the Super Monkey movie? Why not? If Grant Morrison came up with a plot for Beppo the Super Monkey, let's watch.
I really loved the, by the way, speaking of, before I get back into what James Gunn was hinting at, possibly, that chapter, on the Bizarro world and the Underverse.
Yeah.
How much of that is taken from, how much of that was Grant and how much of that was pulled from old canon? Like the way
it's been a while since I've read it. So I just remember there was Bizarro World, created by Luther. It's in a square shape and there's bizarro representations of everybody, Bizarro Lois, Bizarro Perry White, Bizarro Jimmy, all that stuff. And Luther becomes their president king in the Silver Age. There was this thing of the Bizarro World being its own entity, almost like Pandora, in a sense. I don't think that's pure Grant Morrison.
And so all these people are basically like, they're almost like viruses or bacteria that are growing out of the planet.
Yeah,
and they all have individual personalities. And you've got what was it? Zbarro, the anti-Bizarro who actually thought and spoke normally. It was so great. It was just so crazy. It was basically like he was in a fever. Superman was in a fever dream that he had to figure out how to get out of.
Yes,
and there was almost something. The entirety of All-Star Superman kind of has this Terry Gilliam kind of otherworldliness to it,
Yeah,
which I love. Which I haven't watched. There's an animated adaptation of it that came out a while back.
I haven't watched. I've
only seen clips of it. It doesn't look.
I mean, the thing is that, well, I will say this for DC Animation. They have tried to do justice by great storylines from the past 20, 30 years. So you've got animated Batman Year One, you've got animated Killing Joke, and every time they do one, pardon me, I just burped. They, thank you, Mellow Yellow.
Yes.
I can't wait for that check to show up. But when they do it, they attempt to even in an animated style mimic the art style of the artist. And Frank Quitely did All-Star Superman, and I saw that the animation's trying to do sort of Frank Quitely.
Is it? Okay.
It is trying.
It seemed like to me it was just doing an animated universe stuff. But I haven't really watched it.
Yeah, I haven't either, and I would be curious. I avoided it mainly because I had a bad experience with Killing Joke. Even though they were being pretty faithful, they still created this backstory for Batgirl about her and Bruce Wayne hooking up, and I'm like, that's not even in any version of these stories, and I don't like that. So they take liberties. And All-Star Superman is so great. I was like, do I really want to see a truncated animated version? Not so much.
What I think would be wonderful is to do an animated, like a mini series, and actually just do the whole book and Quietly style. I mean, try to get as close to this as you can, because otherwise I don't think it would work. You've got to have Quietly's artwork in there.
You at least need his aesthetic, definitely. And like you said, and I'm pretty sure that he and Grant Morrison, who've collaborated many a time, he was probably like going, hey, Frank, be you, but I want you to go full Silver Age, because I like the fact that it looks, even though it's Grant Morrison writing a very present Grant Morrison-y Superman, he is doing so many callbacks, so it really pops. Like, obviously the colorist also is bringing their A game, because he doesn't pull back. He's like, no, I want, when Lois gets Superman's powers, to have her own like Superwoman outfit, and it's just similar to the one from the 50s that happened when she got his powers. And so at no point are you looking at it going, oh, another drab postmodern Superman. No, you're like going, my eyes. I love it. It's crazy, go nuts fun. I'd say that the one issue, which is I think is like the 11th or 10th issue, the one where it basically does a metatextual Superman's adventures filter out through the multiverse and enter the brains of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. I'm just a sucker for that. So you get like the young teenagers creating Superman on their Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is just like, oh, stop it, man.
So,
Right
yeah,
there.
so as far as what James Gunn is actually hinting at, which I do think he's deliberately hinting something there, because he knows he's just
playing.
fucking with you.
He's playing.
So the spirit, I think that's one thing that I think we can agree on. The spirit of the character that we want to see, the costume that we want to see is in here. The characters that we want to see. We got Lex is Lex, Lois is Lois, Jimmy's kind of a metrosexual Jimmy, but he's still Jimmy. Yeah, he's kind of feeling good about himself in this story, and wearing different clothes and being kind of goofy about it.
Well,
but he's still Jimmy.
What I think what would be smart for James Gunn to take from that, besides the fact that you have a brilliant comics writer coming up with that, is, and we've talked about this before, you have a brilliant comics writer who gets it and isn't ashamed, which that I always bring that up. It's almost like, and even the MCU, which I think is very successful, there is a lot of superhero shame attached to these movies, and especially the DCEU, where it was Snyder's vision, where Snyder wanted them to be gods walking among us and these icons, and the way he desaturated everything and everything shot through a gritty lens and it's sort of blue filtered, and they mute the colors. Superman has got a maroon cape and this indigo blue, and you're like, what is that, man? It's like, and I had the problem with Nolan's Batman films where it's like, okay, the Joker literally paints his face every morning to freak people out. It's not about falling in a vat of chemicals because that's too weird. There's this shame to be full on. We're in that universe. And you look at 1978, that verisimilitude thing we talk about, and you have bright blue, red, and yellow. And the people of that world deal with it.
Yeah.
They accept it face on. That is a flying man with great powers who keeps helping us. Is anyone going to sit there and mock him for wearing red shorts on a blue unitard? Lex Luthor might, but I mean, that's a Luthor thing. But everyone else is just like, I don't care what you're wearing. I'm happy you're here. Yeah. So these movies need to stop being ashamed. And James Gunn, from the first thing he does over at Marvel, the color just blasted out of that thing where they're like going, even Captain America, except for the Avengers, which people complained about Captain America's outfit and the Avengers as being the worst out of all of them. And I was like going, I don't think the design is great, but if nothing else, Joss Whedon gave us a red, white, and blue and not a like olive drab or like dingy gray, white. So I'm like, no. He just wears the colors of the fucking flag. Deal with it. So I like that James Gunn's like, no, man, embrace the fact we're in a comic book universe. And then he goes over to DC and does the Suicide Squad, and he's like, no, polka dot man.
Peacemaker.
Am I going to dance around that? No.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah, and he's like, I want all of them in costumes at least. They'll take their masks off to talk to each other and that kind of thing because they're well-paid actors, and we can't just have them in masks all the time. But still, he was like going, there's Bloodshot. Thank me later. There's Ratcatcher. We're just going to, and Starro the Conqueror. So you're like going, God bless you for not being ashamed of that. So if he reads All-Star Superman, which he's guaranteed that guy's read it a million times before anyway, Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, besides the plots, which are all great and all that, it's just he distilled everything pure Superman out of love and affection without being embarrassed. Did he update things? Yes, because he's Grant Morrison. Did he come up with weird ideas like a sentient bizarre world that is creating its own inhabitants out of a kind of, I mean, that's very Grant Morrison.
Ooze, yeah.
But it's still Bizarro World. So I just think that's the best thing you could take from it is, look, man, let's lean in to a superhero universe without having to couch it in irony and muted color. And I don't want to deconstruct. I just want to construct. I just want to build on what's there and give you pure Superman. Yeah. Just like build on Batman, give us pure Batman. All these characters deserve their own take that is true to the character. Wonder Woman, the movie that Patty Jenkins made, got very close to.
Yeah.
So I forgave a lot of the stuff that she changed about it because I was still going, oh, she's getting the heart of the character right.
Mm-hmm.
I would appreciate if that red was red and that blue was blue. Like, come on, man!
God damn it, Zach. Yeah,
I know, but that's the thing is that I that's why I keep saying I trust James Gunn. He could still prove me wrong, and it could all be shit when it all comes out. But I don't think that guy is the kind of guy who feels embarrassed by being the shepherd of a superhero cinematic universe. Just like Kevin Feige is not embarrassed. Kevin Feige sits there going like, yeah, who knows who will show up? He's like, yeah, MODOK is there. Why? MODOK's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you got to get people to sit there going like, well, I looked at, 8-year-olds like this. I know better. Here's my gritty take on whoever the fuck. It's like, yeah, this ain't your daddy's fill in the blank.
Right. One
I don't want to see
detail.
your daddy's fill in the blank, by the way.
Okay. Well, I'll just set this aside.
Yeah.
One thing I'm hoping that James Gunn will steer away from, because it's just become so cliche in the MCU, is the helmets and masks that materialize by nanobots. Like,
oh yeah,
that thing.
Yeah.
They all have that now. It's like, it was interesting with Iron Man, but now everybody has that technology, and it's just boring.
Well,
now.
I mean, you could assume. Easy. I will say I liked the compromise in Spider-Man No Way Home, because that first suit he gets from Tony, all it does is it deflates and falls off of him. Like he hits the button and it goes, whoo, whoo, but it's still a cloth suit he has to shove somewhere.
Right.
Then of course he gets the Iron Spider thing, and then it is like, yeah. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah. Right.
I still kind of want to see him with a backpack on his shoulders, like going, I hope no one looks in there, because underneath my chemistry textbook is my Spider-Man mask.
But I didn't mind that. It's just that now Ant-Man has one, the Wasp has one, and Star-Lord has one, and it's just goes on and on. Black Panther.
Well, Stark Tech is now, Black Panther totally does.
Come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all techie guys.
Yeah.
They're all techie guys.
It's just played. I just hope he doesn't use
that. You go to Matt
trope.
Reeves, the Batman, and you can see the stitching in his cowl. I'm not sure I want to go that homemade, but still, it was a good look. But I'm still like,
odds on getting the red trunks with James Gunn. Superman.
Oh, good.
Very high. Very high odds.
Very high. I mean, they might still do an update, and I've seen plenty of talented, independent artists go, you don't have to get rid of the red trunks. You just have to change the way it looks. Maybe they're not even separate trunks on top of, so they work in a red area here that connects up to the cape or whatever. I've seen people do takes where even the S goes into the cape, so it's not like cape gets tucked in here. So there's ways to give us that color design. The main reason I fought for the trunks, and listen, man, I fought for the trunks.
There's the title.
I was on the front lines of the trunks fight.
Yeah.
But the reason I fought for that instead of the cool modern idea of the New 52 with no red trunks is it is about color distribution. The Flash even is in a red onesie, but they put that yellow belt in there just because then he's literally in a red unitard. So the thing with Superman, where it's all blue except for the S, and it just goes down to the red boots, I'm like going, that's a guy in a blue body stocking. The red is necessary to break up that straight blue color. Mm-hmm. And I know the origin of it is like circus strongmen back in the 30s. They often wore like leotards and then like trunks on top of them with the belt. And that was literally just back in the 30s. They're like, yeah, do that. Now give him a cape. Oh, cape looks awesome. So essentially, that's the original idea. But from an artistic viewpoint, something to break up that field of blue, very necessary. The only other thing they could possibly do is make the S so big that it's his whole chest and the point goes down his abs, because then you'd have this visual that is red and yellow and is breaking up. But I don't want an S that covers up his entire trunks. I mean, his entire
I do want this back, though. Like, I do want
the yellow S on the back of the cape.
Yes. I want that.
You're never gonna get it, Chad. You're never gonna get it.
Odds
Never gonna get it.
on Big Yellow Key opening the Fortress of Solitude.
Oh, God damn it!
Probably not, right? Was
I
that too
love
far?
78. I love Donner's movie.
Yeah.
I will say that even as a kid, I was like, oh, well, that's a way you could do the Fortress of Solitude, the big crystal things. But I'm like, that really doesn't look comfy. And it also looks like when you get inside of it, there's like no furniture until Superman 2, where he's got his big clamshell bed. You're like, what's in there? It's literally just platforms. At least in the comics, you're like, there's an interplanetary zoo. Here's his Kryptonian library. There's all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, man, make that his fortress, his place to hang out.
Yeah, I don't know about the Big Yellow Key, but I would love to see that version of the Fortress of Solitude, where it's more like a museum.
Big Yellow Key is yes, and I know the Big Yellow Key is goofy. At the same time, the reason it's a brilliant concept is it's so baller. He doesn't hide the fortress in the comics. In the movie, it's more like, this is where I hide. In the comics, anyone that sent a helicopter across, the Arctic Circle would sit there going, look at that giant golden door.
Yeah.
And I could just walk in. No, you can't. You can't get in there. And he even puts the key out in plain view, a giant golden key. And it's basically like, no one can lift it but me.
Yeah.
I love it. He's like going, anybody's welcome if you can get in, but you can't. Flying up the key. Chunk. It's so goofy and I love it. We'll never get it, but I would be there. So I bet under James Gunn, I bet we get a crypto.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that.
And
we were talking about it, but a lot and Supergirl. Oh, absolutely.
I will also say Supergirl as a character has deserved so much better. I mean, Helen Slater was good casting and very lovely, but that movie is shit. And I'm just sitting there going, and that was her one and only shot. That's the only, other than animation, we've never gotten Supergirl. Oh, wait. Didn't they have some version in Smallville?
Did they? I don't remember. I stopped watching after.
I did too. I gave up around season 4 or 5.
Yeah, it just
kept going for another 5 years. It's like really? They're doing what now?
How many characters can we show you who aren't who they're going to be? It frustrating. Come on. God damn it.
Yeah.
So what are the odds, do you think, on the Superman S?
Oh, yeah.
Which I want to be back on the game. Donner introduced the idea of that being their family crest, right? Wasn't that originally his idea? That was then carried over into the comics?
It may have been with the movie. Because it wasn't originally that. Before then, right. And I think that because literally 70, we're coming right off the Silver Age then and going into the Bronze Age, and the Bronze Age didn't feel like explaining too much. There was a World of Krypton miniseries. There was one in the 70s, and there was also one in the 80s when they, after Byrne, changed everything. But I don't think they ever gave the S to Jor-El. He was still wearing that sun design that he always had on his chest and his cool red headband. Dude, he was ready for the 80s.
I do love the idea, and I understand why it's
a very good idea.
Even Zack Snyder's Superman had it. So I'm curious to know if James is going to do that.
The one change that Byrne made, which was actually kind of he went retro, because he did not keep that idea from Superman the movie.
Oh, he didn't?
Byrne had Clark saving people in normal clothes until he gets exposed by Lois. Like, people had heard about this fantastic flying man that saved people. And then he saves Lois when her space shuttle plane is about to crash. And the public mobs him, and he's just in normal street clothes. And they're like, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. And so she's one of the first. She names him Superman because they don't know who he is.
Right.
And then Ma Kent makes him a costume.
Oh, based on that.
And she goes, I like that, what she called you, Superman. And that would, if you have an emblem like this, it'll distract people from wondering who you are, because now you are just Superman. So she goes, see, it's an S in the shield. And he's like, that looks great, Ma, thanks. So that was the 80s reverse. But I like the idea that, it wasn't meant to be an S. It's a Kryptonian symbol. It's the House of L. And then, of course, the whole thing of like, it means hope.
Hope.
Which was Mark Waid in Birthright. That then Zack Snyder stole that for Man of Steel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are my glasses?
So, Yeah.
But
It
I
would
like
be
that
nice.
idea.
I definitely think they should get away from the crystalline Krypton thing, because Superman and Lois has totally embraced that whole aesthetic too. It's basically
Sure.
they
Yeah.
basically are doing an extension of the Donner Superman in that show, which
Yeah.
is fine. But it's time to. I think it's time to do something new. So
Man,
I
in the comics, somewhere in the 2000s, where they decided that we're done with the Arctic Fortress of Solitude. Now he's got one that pops up out of, was it the Atlantic Ocean? He had one that was underwater, or he had one in like the Mexican jungles or South American jungles. And I was like, and you know, he still had his Kryptonian robots there watching over the place. And I was just like going, this is dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then they said, "Oh no, the Arctic one's still there. Now he has two." And now the comics are like just ignoring the other one. They're like, "No, he's just back to the Arctic." He's just, it's like, come on, man, just don't fuck with it too much. Just let him be.
Yeah. And the Superman and Lois, they have, I don't know, have you ever gotten into watching it, but the main
about 5 episodes. I mean, it's not that I didn't hate it. I just, I don't know. The CW teen drama stuff wasn't working for me so much.
I know. Yeah. The main antagonist in the first few seasons is Superman's long lost brother, half brother.
Oh, good.
I think they just made up for the show, named Taro.
Yeah.
And he's turns out he's been on Earth the whole time in hiding, and he's got his own Fortress of Solitude, which is in the desert. It's made out of sand instead of ice. So it's too much.
Brothers.
Way too
am
much.
I right? It's just like me and Robin. Like, I've got my Fortress of Solitude in Portland. Robin's got his Fortress of Solitude in Rhode Island, and we're diametrically opposed, and you guys don't want us clashing.
No.
That's just dumb. But comics do dumb shit all the time too, so I can't just say, "Hey, TV, get it right."
Yeah.
I'm gonna shake my little fist at you.
They did a lot of things that were cool in that show, and the one of them, which we've already kind of alluded to unintentionally, was I think it's in the first episode, and he only wears a suit briefly, but he for one scene he actually has the Fleischer.
No, that was the first episode. I saw that.
Yeah, the Fleischer Superman. He goes, "Oh, my mom made it for me." It looked so good. It's like, no, just keep that suit.
Actually, it did look really good. It was very surprising, but also, I mean, it was very intentional in that episode where they're like going, "We want to give you what you guys haven't gotten from Snyder." And while that guy, Taylor how do you say his name?
Hecklin, I think. Tyler Hecklin.
Tyler Hecklin. He's good. He's not exactly what I picture, obviously. No. He's got a skinny neck. I'm very nitpicky.
He doesn't quite look the part, but he plays the part very well.
But that's the thing, is that right there in that one encapsulate, and I remember after the episode aired, because I watched it, and then everyone made it a meme. They're like, that's what we wanted this whole time. There's a kid who's excited to see him, and Superman he saves the day, but still has time just to walk over and chat with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. And he's just like, he's totally just related. He's like going, "That's a really cool suit." He's like, "Thanks. My mom made it for me." And you're just like going, the wholesomeness, I want to hug it. I want to hug that wholesomeness.
Yeah. This, by the way, we were talking about.
Again, when I say that on public transportation, I get weird looks. But you get what I'm after when I say I want to hug that wholesome.
Oh, yes. Hey, there's another title.
I gotta stop saying it to strangers.
Yeah. Probably a good idea. Shit, now I lost my train of thought. We were talking about
Tyler Hockner and the purity of Superman and getting memes and the Fleischer suit and
damn it.
I don't know. Superman and Lois.
I had it on the tip of my tongue. Shit. Okay.
It's all right.
Never mind.
We're both very old. You've been drinking too much. Lean back again. Lean back again. You've been drinking too much proper number 12 Irish whiskey.
This was given to me. This is one of these freebies I get at shows.
Hey, and I'm almost kind of serious, kind of not. But I also know that you are not a crazy imbiber. But being in an Irish band, and I know an Irish rock band, I know this is a cliche, but is it just really drunk fans and your band is totally schnockered all the time?
It's no, our band does not. Our lead singer Patrick does not drink, so we've always been we've never been a drunk band.
I'm just saying, I've listened to a lot of the Pogues.
Yes, I do drink.
And I just know what you guys are up to, okay?
No. No, it's funny because Patrick is from Ireland, but he doesn't drink. And so that's always been kind of this dichotomy.
Kind of funny.
Yeah. So, but that has managed. That's one of the things.
Shows, I'm sure there are people, completely non-Irish people, but like going, let me buy you whiskey, man. I mean, because that's what you guys like, right? And you're like, no, thank you. An RC Cola would be fine. Do you happen to have a Royal Crown?
I will say, I did not drink whiskey.
Or the taste that the millions love. Cha-ching.
I did not drink whiskey before I joined this band, and now I do. I'll just say that. Do I drink it every day? No. I don't even know if I've ever had this.
knowing that I am a teetotaler, but at one show that we did, not Zeus's Pedals, not Capper-esque here in Portland, but in San Francisco when we were What Fresh Hell.
Yes.
Different band makeup, but it was Scott, Patrick, me. So you know those guys, but also our friend David, and we had rotating other people.
Mm-hmm.
So we were about to do a show in San Francisco, and I was like, man, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if I'm, my energy's down. And Scott was like going, you should do a shot of whiskey. It'll help your vocal cords. And I was like, I've never heard that. And he goes, no, it strips them. So, I mean, they're clear and ready. Cause I was feeling a little under weather. And this guy goes, besides, I will buy it. And I just want to see you do it. And I was like, all right. So he bought me a shot of whiskey. I mean, I've tasted whiskey before, but I mean, they're like, oh my God, are you going to do it? So it was a big thing. Me, the non-drinker. So before we went on, I was like, all right, to your health. And I was like, it's like, it's awful. I will say, because my tolerance is absolutely zero, because I don't drink, that I did feel very loose that performance. I did feel a little something from one shot, but I don't know if I sounded better, but I did actually, because I'm always an anxious singer, because I'm listening to myself while I'm singing going, correct, that is wrong, get on the note, all that kind of stuff is in my head. I didn't care. We did that set. I was just like belting it and like going, I think I'm doing good.
It does have that power, yeah. And because I don't drink whiskey that often, I will sometimes, like if I have a minute, I'll go to the bar, so give me a shot of Jameson.
There you go.
I'll just
don't be ashamed of your alcoholism, man. We're here with you. We're here with you.
It is really useful for shaking the nerves off, but I don't know about the vocal cords thing.
That's what Scott said, but
Brendan, it'll make your singing voice.
Really also, it'll make your penis grow an extra 2 inches. Well, I'll have that shot of whiskey. Thank you very much, Scott. But anyway, sorry to derail us off Superman, but I wanted to ask you about stereotypes of Irish bands.
Yeah. Anytime. I'm here to oblige.
I'm a representative. Blaggards. Good luck editing this episode, Chad, because we were all over the map on this one. But we did talk about what we said we were going to talk about. Last of Us, video games, and we still got around to James Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about good stuff.
Yeah, we did.
And I think as focused as we ever are. If anyone's listening to us at all, they're not surprised. When I looked at the last episode, and again, congrats on how well you set this up. The fact that you're giving time codes of our different topics, I was like, that's nuts.
Oh, I've learned how to do that. Yeah, I do that. It's a streamlined process now. So as I'm editing it, I'll go, think, okay, here's where we start talking about this. You can add markers to it as you're doing it. And then I figured out a way to export those. And there's somebody online who I don't know his name. I should thank him. He created this web app where you paste in the exported bookmarks and it spits them out in a format that you can paste into YouTube, and which automatically. Cool. I'm able to do it really quickly.
It's very impressive, but again, I was sitting there going, "That's a terrible job." That's you literally going, Popeye, Harry Nilsson, night sweats, because just going off on weird topics like. Brendan talked about his sink that broke. Actually, my sink did break earlier today, just so you know.
Oh, no.
My socks are still damp.
Oh, shit.
It's all right. Apartment maintenance came and took care of it. Just wanted you to know my sink broke. So yeah, so now you have to include that in the topics. Right at the end, it's like Brendan's sink broke.
Yeah.
Oh no, they fixed it. It was literally like a seal in the S curve or whatever, and I'm not handy. I mean, I see water coming out of when I'm washing dishes, going, what the fuck? Call the maintenance guy, comes up, and he fixed it. We live in a great world, Chad.
Wow.
Yeah. And on that note, bye. Yeah. We've talked a long time. I think our listeners got something out of it.
Yeah, I think you and I both ate before this show. This is we're usually like, okay,
it's true. I actually did have lunch earlier because I was like, I always end this by going, I'm really hungry. I was like, you know what? That's not a good look for you, Brendan. Maybe it'd be good for you to end a podcast without you going, and now I'm going to eat. I already ate.
Well, I guess we can wrap it up here, and maybe I'll probably remember what I was going to say about Superman.
Yeah, this is going to drive you crazy.
I'm editing the show.
Something about Superman and Lois, and you're like, that was what I was going to say. Fortress of Solitude.
Fuck.
Superman's brother.
Damn it. Yeah, no, it's still not coming.
Kelsevel. The S stands for hope. Anyway, let me know when you figure it out, and I'll pretend like I didn't know. We can edit it in. I'll wear the same thing.
Okay.
And then we'll just go like going, oh, and I just happen to think of, it's 3 days later.
And I hope next week we can actually talk about whatever James is going to announce, because
we're very excited. We're very excited. And in the meantime, I'm just looking at trailers for Quantum Mania and saying, can't come soon enough.
I know. When is that coming out, by the way?
That is, I think it's like Valentine's Day. I think it's like February 14th or something like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we have a Tesla City Story show on the 10th. And what I love about the movie dropping after is like, the pressure of the show will be gone. And I'm going to be sitting there going, the show's done. And now just waiting on Ant-Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Waiting on Ant-Man is also the name of my one-man show that will be opening here in the Black Box Theater. And I'll do a lot of this acting.
Yeah, right.
I just don't know if he's going to get here. I don't know how tall he's going to be. He talks to ants. It's not going to be a good show, but I'm very proud of the work I put into it. All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Be well. Stop drinking that whiskey. All right, bye.
Okay. Bye.